We have the numerous. We have Kaf Gimel,
In Kaf Beis Hey
Kaf Base. Oh, wait.
is
Check
our
this out.
custom.
The new ones. Okay, I'm always mixed up. Okay, one who bathes. Okay, Gazara. One who bathed in the water of a cave or in the water of Tiberias and dried himself with even 10 towels may not carry them in his hand, but 10 people may dry themselves with one towel, their faces, their hands, their feet, and they may carry it in their hands.
Okay, so
One
the
may
concern over here, just to be clear, the concern here is when he's carrying the towel, you're worried that he's going to squeeze it. So the schita
right.
is the malacha here that we're concerned about. So we're saying why even 10 towels, because the last one's like basically dry, but they just made a gezerah. You're not allowed to carry this towel out because it's going to come to schita. But if the 10 people together, then we're not concerned because they'll look out for each other and remind each other not to squeeze. The halacha doesn't follow this Mishnah. And the Gemara explains that this gezerah didn't stick, and we don't have such a halacha at all. That if somebody, even if one person goes and washes himself off in the mikveh or something, then he's allowed to carry his towel. Okay, carry on.
One may anoint and massage the stomach, but we may neither knead nor scrape the skin. We may not go down to Kodima, nor take an emetic, or nor straighten an infant's limbs, nor set a fracture. If one's hand or foot became dislocated, they may not massage them with cold water, but he may bathe according to the usual manner, and if he is healed, he is healed.
Okay, so we've seen these halachas before about refuah, that we don't allow people to do actions that are obviously for refuah, but if you do something that is that normal healthy people do, and it happens to affect a refuah, that's also okay.
So we're saying that if a person had a dislocated shoulder, we would not be able to put it back in place.
And that's a really difficult one, because having a dislocated shoulder, I've never had one, and please God, I never will have one. But from what I'm told, it is excruciatingly painful. And I personally would have a lot of difficulty questioning on somebody. Sorry, you've got to stay like that for the rest of Shabbos.
I think once they snap it in place, that's it. It's gone. The pain is gone. I think that's the story about that.
Yeah.
Once they fix it, but you're right. You know, it's very painful. I'm sure. I had that with I had that when I broke my ankle. The orthopedist said, I'm sorry, I have to put this back in place, or you'll lose your foot because there's no blood there."
Yeah.
So he called his assistant in, and my wife said she heard me screaming in the waiting room.
Oh.
And they gave me morphine and stuff.
Oh.
I never forget that. It was unbelievable. I was seeing stars, even with the morphine. But
Yeah. It's incredible how debilitating pain can be. Yeah.
I
Anyway,
can remember he
Riley
said
is
to me,
with
this was
us.
like 35 years ago. He said,
Good morning,
"Okay,
Riley.
Riley's with you. Hi, Riley."
Good morning.
He said
Okay.
to me, "You're not gonna like me." You know, how are you, Riley?
I'm good, thank God. How's everybody there?
Okay, Baruch Hashem.
Okay. We're in chapter 23.
Olive, 23 Olive. Of Shabbos.
Okay. I should take it?
Yeah, go for it.
You want to do it?
All right, I'm there. One may borrow jugs of wine from another, as long as one doesn't say to him, loan me. And similarly, a woman can borrow from another loaves of bread. And if the lender doesn't trust him that he'll return them, he can leave his cloak with him as collateral and make a proper calculation for him after Shabbos. And similarly, on the eve of Pesach in Yerushalayim, when it occurs on Shabbos, one may leave his cloak with him. My note says one who's procuring a can leave his cloak with him. That is the person from whom he's purchasing it, and take the lamb and bring it as his korban Pesach, and make the proper calculation after the festival.
Okay, so the two ikka points inside here. One is that you can't do transactions on Shabbos, so it can't be like a loan and say, okay, I'm watching after these loaves. But if you're just going to the neighbor and saying, can I have a cup of sugar, please? It's okay. Between neighbors, people are generally not that much. But you'll come back and you'll give back a cup of sugar later. But if you don't, nobody. Cheers, Tamari. So you can't do it like loan me. Okay, fine, I'm loaning you, but I'm watching this. It can't be with that hakpada. And if there's a matter where it's something valuable and he wants to help him, but he doesn't, but he wants to have a security, it's fine to leave a security, so that just to make sure that it gets settled up after Shabbos. Okay. I just Riley, I'll apologize to you too as well. I did not. I neglected to do my preparation last night. So we're going to learn this all together. Hopefully, we'll remember it from last time we did it. Mone Adam is orcha is parperosav mi piv. So if a person has guests who coming to a Shabbos Suda, and he's got parperos, which is different desserts, I think, is little portions, whatever it is. I don't think it's stuff good desserts, but he's got a certain number of portions. So he's got 10 guests and he's got 10 portions. Okay, so a person can count them out orally, but he can't do it from a list. That he even if he had prepared it on Erev Shabbos. Okay, the reasons that are given in the Gemara for this are Aleph, Gezerah, because he might come to erase one of the invited people. Okay, because he doesn't. Hold on a second, please. Okay. So we're saying that because he might come to erase one of the people on the list, or because the guy said, "I'm sorry, I can't make it," or he'll remove one of the desserts because of some reason. Okay. Or base. The second reason the Gemara gives is Shema Yisrael Likros B'Shtari Hedyotos, because it might lead him to become used to reading documents, sort of whole documents, regular things that haven't got to do with the kedusha, business contracts and sales, and you might come to read them on Shabbos. Okay, and somebody will explain that all of these anything that's not Kisvei Kodesh is called Shtar Hedyot. And it's asked to read them on Shabbos according to some poskim. Okay. So you can have a lottery at the table. Apparently, this was a thing where you can have a little lottery with your family to say who's going to get the first portion. Okay, because among family members, people are friendly, they like each other generally, and they're not going to be makpid, and they'll be happy with whatever the Hagrala says. But with people who are not the family, you don't do this on Shabbos, because each one has got his own possible hakbadas against other people. Someone's not going to be happy that somebody else got first. He's going to be unhappy that there was a lottery, and it's going to come to. And they're going to start measuring and making sure that everyone's got exactly the same size portion, and that's and then it's going to start getting into issues of lending and borrowing, because you've given me too much of this. Let's get this. Let's straighten out your portions and whatever. So we don't get into that on Shabbos. But even with your family, make sure that at least to the eye it looks like relatively even portions. Okay, so that you don't come into any kinds of conflicts between them. Mishum kubia. The reason is because kubia is like it looks like gambling, and it's like and then it looks like mekachomemka v'Shabbos, that you're doing trade. Some people that you're having this dice game and the winner gets the big portion or something like that. We don't do that. Okay, matilem chalashim al hakodashim b'yom tov aval lo al hamanos. Okay, so what does this mean? Metilim Chalashim is also Gorelos. It's also kind of a lottery. Al Kodshim B'Yom Tov. So this is in the Mikdash with the korbanos that are shechted on Yom Tov in order to divide the meat between the kohanim. You can do a lottery to see who gets to shech the animals. Okay, to divide the meat of Allah ala manos, but not on the individual portions. Al chelkei hakodshim shenishchatu be'erev Yom Tov. Since the time to do the lottery was before Yom Tov, Chachamim said you cannot do a Hagrala on Yom Tov. Now that's why would this? Oh, this is Chelkei Kodeshim, so this would be on for Shlamim, I guess. So because Shlamim has got a 2-day period. Okay, so that if you're going to make a lottery on that thing, you should do it on Erev Yom Tov, not on the Yom Tov itself. So the Rambam explains in a different way. He says that this lottery is done in whether they're shechted on Yom Tov or Erev Yom Tov in order to make the mitzvahs dearer. He says Avalo alamanos. What does that mean? Hainu alamanos shel chulin, but you don't do it on chulin pieces. She'ein matilim gorelos aleim b'Yom Tov. So the Rambam explains that this is that with kodshim, it's always okay to do the lottery on the pieces of meat among the kohanim, because this is lechaber v'samitzvos. But for chulin, there's no such heter, as we've learned previously in the Mishna, that it's going to start coming to measuring, and hey, I should get a bigger portion. I can't quite get into the head of the idea of getting the lottery of portions, but maybe that seems to have been a custom in those times. Hey, Mishnah Gimel. Lo yiskor adam po'alim b'Shabbos. A person can't hire workers on Shabbos. V'lo yamar adam lechavero liskor lo po'alim, and he can't ask somebody else to hire him workers. Now, why would you have thought that you could? For like a Yom Chol, obviously. So the Gemara explains why we had the second piece of the Mishnah, because of the diok. Lo yamar adam b'Shabbos lechavero sheyiskor po'alim, aval omer lo hanir ta'amod imila erev. He can say to his friend, you want to come back this evening, Motzei Shabbos. Okay, in other words, come to me when it gets dark, and both of them know in their heads that they're going to be talking business after Shabbos. But since he's not saying it explicitly, that's mutar. So you're allowed to say to your friend, come back after Shabbos and let's talk, because talking on Shabbos is also mutar. You can talk business, okay, but you didn't say it. So that's perfectly legit. Okay. Ein machshichin al hatachum liskor poalim lahavi peros, aval machshichu lishmor umevi peros biyado. So a person can't wait at the Tchum Shabbos in order to hire workers and to bring peros. Because then effectively you're doing hachana on Shabbos. So this is what we're talking about now, is hachana, is doing something on Shabbos that's in preparation for Motzei Shabbos. So you have no business hanging out on the Tchum Shabbos if you're not planning to go you're not planning to go anywhere further than that. But he's hanging around there waiting for workers to come from the neighboring city. So he's preparing for Motzei Shabbos. And similarly, like he wants to pick fruit in his field, so he's going out into the field and hanging out there until Motzei Shabbos in order to pick the fruit. That's also called a hachana. But what he can do is say, listen, I'm worried that the birds are coming in and eating my fruit. So I'm going to hang out in my field until the end of Shabbos, just so I can chase the birds away. And that's legit. You're allowed to chase birds away on Shabbos. Okay. And then as it happens, so Shabbos is going to come out, and then he can pick some fruit and come back. So if he's got a legitimate purpose on Shabbos for being there, then that's okay. But he can't do it specifically to do something after Shabbos. He says, he has a nice general rule for you. Anything that I'm allowed to say to somebody to do on Shabbos, I'm also allowed to prepare myself for after Shabbos to do if I'm doing that myself. You understand what he's saying is that hang on, yes, there are those who are saying that Abba Shaul is actually disagreeing with the Tanakama. So let's just see what how Kati explains this. The opinion of the Tanakama is that you can't sit on the Tchum on Shabbos unless it's for things that it's mutar to do within Shabbos for himself. But things that you can't do on Shabbos, even though it's mutar to say to someone that they should do it on Motzei Shabbos, for example, to raise funds for the kala. Right now, that's a mitzvah. You can't actually raise funds on Shabbos, but because it's a davar mitzvah, you're allowed to talk about it on Shabbos. So that's the nafkamina over here, and we'll see that in the coming Mishna. Okay. Nonetheless, it's asur to, according to the Tanakama, it's asur to go out to the Tchum in order to prepare for collecting money. So let's say he wants to go to the neighboring town in order to raise money for the kala. So he say, okay, let's get a head start on this and make sure that I'm right on the Tchum on Motzei Shabbos, so I can go straight there and get some money. Okay, but Abba Shaul says different. He says no. He says if you're allowed to talk about it on Shabbos, then you're allowed to go to the Tchum to prepare yourself for Motzei Shabbos. Okay, and the halacha over here says Gahati, the halacha is like Abba Shaul, that if you're allowed to talk about it, then you're allowed to prepare on Shabbos for it too. Okay, Mishna Daled. There you go. That's the explicit thing. So you're allowed to. So this follows the psak here of Abba Shaul, so that you can go up to the Tchum Shabbos in order to be ready to go next door to raise funds for the kala. Va'al iskei hameis, or to prepare for a funeral. If somebody Rahman al died on Shabbos, and they want to be ready to go and get whatever they need for the funeral, then they can prepare themselves on Shabbos to do that, as long as they don't do any malacha. Aron tachrich, and to bring him a coffin or shrouds. Goy shehevi chalilin b'Shabbos. So if a goy came from a neighboring town and he brought flutes on Shabbos, this apparently was the minhag of the time of the Mishna, is that at the funeral they would play flutes. Okay. Lo yispod bahen Israel ela im kain ba'u mimakom karov. So the Jew can't use those flutes because it seems clear that the guy brought them on behalf of the Jews. So you can't use them until ad kadesh sheyasu, until you've had a sufficient time. Okay, ela im kain ba'u mimakom karov, unless it was from a close place, like within the Tchum, so that it's within enough time that even a Jew could have brought it from Motzei Shabbos. Asu lo aron v'chafru lo kever. So if the guy made a coffin, or he dug a grave, yikaver bo Israel. So if it was just that the guy was doing his stuff on Shabbos and he happened to dig a hole that it was just he was digging a hole for anyone who happened to die. Okay, then a Jew can be buried in that on Motzei Shabbos. The Im Bishvil Yisrael. However, if the guy did it specifically for the Jew, lo yikaver bo olamis. Interesting. He says olamis. I would have thought until Kudei Sheyasu. Motzei Shabbos. Oh, if it was so that particular Jew, right? So if the non-Jew did it particularly for this mace on Shabbos, it says that particular Jew who died cannot be buried there ever. But for another Jew, he can use that grave after Kadesh Yeyasu. So it's not like the grave itself becomes permanently forbidden. This is specifically when the goy did it in public for a Jew. Then it's asur to bury him in that forever, because of the kavod hameis. But if it was done privately, then Motzei Shabbos you can use it after Kadei Sheyasu. So we saw this previously that that if a goy does melacha for himself or for no particular Jew, then you're allowed to benefit from it. But if he did it specifically for the Jew, then you're not allowed to benefit from it until Kadesh Yasu, and until enough time that a Jew would have been able to do it Motzei Shabbos. Okay, good. Let's go back to chapter 18. Mishna Aleph.
18 Aleph. Yudches. We may clear away even 4 or 5 baskets of straw or produce to make room for guests or to avoid curtailment of study, but not a storehouse. We may clear away truma that is tahor, demai, first tithe whose truma has been separated from it, second tithe and consecrated property that have been redeemed, and dry lupin, because it is a food for the poor. But we may untithe produce, nor first tithe whose truma has not been separated from it, nor second tithe, nor consecrated property that have not been redeemed, nor kolasia, nor mustard. Rabbi Shimon ben Gamil permits kolasia since it is a food for ravens.
With regard to bundles of straw and bundles of wood, bundles of twigs, if one prepared them on for animal food, my note says on Erev Shabbos, one could move them, and if not, one may not move them. One may overturn a basket in front of the chicks so that they can climb on and climb off. With regard to a hen that fled, one can push it until it re-enters. One may help calves and foals to walk. A woman can help her son to walk. Rabbi Huda says, when can you do that? When he can pick up 1 foot and when he picks up 1 foot and puts down 1 foot by himself. So he can actually not just dragging the kid around. However, like it says, if her son were dragging both of his feet, it would be prohibited because that's essentially carrying.
We may not assist an adult in delivering his young on Yom Tov, but we may support it. We may assist a woman in childbirth on Sabbath. We may call a midwife from place to place for her, but we may desecrate Shabbos on her behalf. And we may tie the umbilical cord. If Yossi says we may even cut it. And all requirements of circumcision Shabbos.
Okay. Base above.
For those transgressions, women die during their For 3 transgressions, women die during the childbirth because they are not careful regarding the laws of Nida, Chala, or kindling the Sabbath light.
Okay. There are 3 things a person must say in his home on Shabbos Eve at nightfall. Have you tithed? Have you placed the eruv? And light the lamp. Let's see if there's a lot of commentary here. Sages say principle: if the time arrives on Friday where there's uncertainty whether it's nightfall or whether it's not yet nightfall, one may not tithe the crop that has definitely not been tithed, and one may not immerse ritually in pure vessels, and one may not light the Shabbos lights. However, one may tithe demai, and one may and insulate hot water to be used on Shabbos.
And then you can also make an eruv. Marvin says.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
A double stove that was a double stove that was heated with straw or with stubble, we may place a cooked food upon it. If it was heated with mark or with wood, one may not place cooked food on it until he has swept away the coals, until he has put away ashes over them. Where Beit Shammai says hot water may not cook food. Water may not cook food, but Beit Hillel says both hot water and cooked food. Beit Shammai says we may remove the food, but we may not replace it. And Beit Hillel says we may even replace it.
Okay. All right.
We have Trumos.
Yeah, Trumos, Zion Dalet.
Okay. This is the general principle. Whoever one has to repay both the value and the fifth the repayment becomes truma. And if the priest desires to forgive the repayment, he cannot forgive. But whenever one has to repay the value only and not the fifth, the repayment remains chulin. And if the priest wants to forgive the repayment, he can.
If there were two baskets cooling, and a saw of truma fell into one of them, and it is not known which it fell, I presume that it fell into the one of truma. If it is not known which is truma and which is chulin, and he ate one of them, he is exempt, and it is liable to chala. So so says Reb Meir. Reb Yossi exempts. If another person ate the other one, he is exempt. If one ate both, he repays the value of the smaller of the two.
If one of these baskets fell into chulin, it does not render it meduma, but the second is treated as truma and subject to the law of chala. These are the words of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yossi exempts it. If the second falls elsewhere into chulin, it does not render it meduma. If both of them fall in one place, they render it meduma according to the proportion of the smaller of the two.
No, you've got a vadai. One of them is definitely truma, but we just don't know. We assume it's a smaller one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Hey, we're close.
Mikvaos, yeah. Aleph Gimel.
If tummy water fell into it and then a tahor person drank from it, he becomes tummy. If tummy water fell into it and then one drew
So this over here is we're talking about megvaos, basically leftover rainwater in puddles.
If tummy water fell into it and then one drew from it into a tahor vessel, it becomes tummy. If tummy water fell into it and then a loaf of truma fell into it, it is rinsed. It becomes tameh. If he did not rinse it, it remains tahor. Rabbi Shimon says whether he rinsed it or it did not rinse, it becomes tameh. I just can't picture drinking water that was from the mikveh.
Sorry, which Mishnah? Which
Mikvaos Aleph Dalet now.
Oh, Dalet. Okay. If a corpse fell into it, or an unclean person walked into it, and a clean person drank from it, he's clean. The same rule applies to the water of pools, the water of cisterns, the water of ditches, waters of caverns, rain flows which have stopped, mikvahs of less than 40 sa'as.
Right.
They're all
so
clean.
Basically, the water, as long as it remains in the ground, it remains tahor. Even as it points out, even if a mace touches it, as long as it remains in the ground, it's only when it gets lifted up then it can become tameh. And if it subsequently falls back in, it remains tameh. So that drop of tameh water, it falls back in and it's not batal. So now you have to treat it as if it's tameh. So if it's 40 sa'ah, as we'll see later, that's a mikveh. A mikveh cannot become tameh, but if it's less than that, then it's still susceptible to while it's in place, it's always tahor. But if it gets uprooted, then it can be tahor. Tameh.
Yeah.
It says in the previous Mishnah that you said it can't become. If tummy water fell into it and then a tahor person drank from it, it becomes tummy.
Yes, exactly. So it's tameh. So basically,
right.
it was already because somebody lifted water out of it. In all these cases, somebody lifted water out of it and it fell back in. Even if a drop of tameh water falls back in, then that pool somewhere in there has probably got a drop of tameh water in it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right.
They are all clean during the time of rain. When the rain has stopped, those near to a city or a road are unclean, and those distant remain clean until the majority of people pass that way.
Okay. When do they become purified? Beis Shammai says when they are increased by a greater amount and they also overflow. Beis Hillel says they were increased by a greater amount even though they did not overflow. Rabbi Shimon says, if it overflows, even though they were not increased by a greater amount, they are fit for challah and for ritual rinsing of the hands. Nachos. Nachos is Yud Gimel Vav.
Yud Gimel. Hey, hold on, let me just check. What is it? Yeah, you're right. Yud Gimel Vav.
If one said, I take it upon myself to bring an olah, he brings a lamb. But Eliezer ben Azariah says either a pigeon or a young dove. I specified from cattle, but I do not know what I specified. He must bring a bull and a calf. From animals, but I do not know what I specified. He must bring a bull and a calf, a ram, a kid, and a lamb. I specified, but I do not know what I specified. He adds to them a pigeon and a young dove.
Okay. Zion,
Yes.
Yud Gimel Zion. One who says, it's incumbent upon me to bring a thanks offering and a peace offering must bring a lamb. One who says, I vowed and I specified that it would be from the herd, but I don't know which animal I specified, must bring a bull and a cow. And a male
So it
calf
could also,
and a
so it could
female
also be a
calf.
female. That's right, because a Torah and Shlamim could also be females.
One who says, I vowed to bring my commentaries adding in different types of offerings. I don't know if that's relevant.
Yes.
One who said, I vowed to bring a burnt offering and specified that it would be from the animals, but I don't know which animal I specified. I must bring a bull and a cow, a male calf and a female calf, a ram and an ewe.
This wouldn't be a burnt offering though, because that an ola could only be a male. So it's got to be talking about Torah and Shlamim, and that's the introduction to the Mishnah. So I don't know, it can't be a burnt offering.
Yeah, okay. So forget my commentary then. So one who says from the animals. So first we've had he's actually he says I'm bringing the thanks and the toda and the shlamim.
Mhm.
Then he brings the lamb. But if he says from the herd, then it's the bull, the cow, the male calf, female calf. If he just says from the animals, not the herd, but the animals, then it's a bull, a cow, a male calf, a female calf, a ram, and an ewe, a large male goat and a large female goat, a small male goat and a small female goat, and a male lamb and a female lamb. So be careful, folks.
If you say something, remember what you say.
If I said I take upon myself to bring an ox, he must bring it and its libation offering for a mana. A calf, he must bring it and its libation offering for 5. A ram, he must bring it and its libation offering for 2. A lamb, he must bring it and its libation offering for a selah. If he said an ox for a mana, he must bring it for a mana beside his libation offering.
Right, so now that doesn't. So now previously you could include the nesachim with the mane, but now if he said that the ox itself is a mane, then he's got to spend extra to bring the nesachim.
A calf for 5, he must bring it for 5 besides its libation offering. A ram for 2, he must bring it 2 besides its libation offering. And a lamb for a selah, he must bring it for a selah beside its libation offering. If he said an ox for a mana and he brought 2 for a mana, he has not fulfilled his obligation, even if each is for a mana less a dinner. Black and he brought white, or white and he brought black, one large and he brought a small, he has not fulfilled his obligation. Small and he brought a large one, he has fulfilled his obligation. Rebbe says he has not fulfilled his obligation.
Okay.
Nazir.
Yeah, Nazir. Dalad.
A woman who vowed to be a Nazira and set aside her animal, and then her husband revoked her Naziris. If her animal was his, it may go out and pasture with the flock. If her animal was hers, the sin offering dies, the burnt offering is offered as a burnt offering, and the peace offering is offered as a peace offering, but it is eaten for 1 day and does not require bread. If she had unspecified funds, they go for voluntary offerings. Specified fund, the money goes for the sin offering, goes to the Dead Sea, but one may not benefit from it. But the rules governing the misuse of sacred items do not apply to it. With the money for the burnt offering, they bring a burnt offering, and the rules governing the misuse of sacred items apply. With the money for the peace offering, they bring a peace offering, but it is eaten for 1 day, and it does not require bread.
Right, because the money for the shlamim, you can always bring a voluntary shlamim, but since it comes from a Nazir offering, what should have been a Nazir offering, that the Nazir offering has a time limit that's shorter than the regular shlamim, so he only gets to eat it for one day and 1 night. Okay. You see, just to break it down, each of your 3 offerings has got different dinim. A chatas has to be bought for a specific purpose. You can't voluntarily bring a chatas. So there was money that was set aside for the chatas of a nazir. Now you can't bring that. Now you can't bring that chatas. The money is unusable. Okay, so that has to be go into the Dead Sea. But for an ola, you can bring a voluntary ola. So spend money on the Nola. And the same thing goes to the Shlamim. You can bring a voluntary Shlamim, but there's a Chumrah over here that you've got to keep. That it's not like a regular Shlamim. You've got a shorter time period to eat it in.
Right.
Hey.
Riley?
Yep. Oh, there I am. The previous, okay. Long introduction. If the blood from one of her offerings, Nazarite offerings, was sprinkled on the altar on her behalf, the husband cannot nullify her vow. Rabbi Akiva says even before he cannot nullify, as soon as any one of the animals has been slaughtered on her behalf. In what case is this statement said? It's when she's bringing the offering for her shaving of ritual purity. However, if she is sacrificing the offerings for her shaving of impurity, so one, I guess the first case is when she's completing.
Mm-hmm.
The second case is where she became impure during her term. After which point she restarts, her husband can nullify her vow. The reason is that he can say, I do not want a downcast wife who doesn't drink wine. Rabbi Meir says he can nullify her vow even at the stage of shaving for purity after she's begun sacrificing her offerings, as he can say, I don't want a shaven wife. And
they don't learn this Mishnah in the Hasidus.
You don't do that.
So she can make it all the way through up until the very last thing where she's about to shave her head, and the husband's like, wait a second.
Wait a second. Up to this point where they're going to shave your head? Mm-mm. Okay,
it was cool. That was cool until now, but
just bear in mind, he can only do the hafara on the day he finds out about the vow. After that, he loses the right. So it's within that, up until Shkia on the day that he finds out about the vow. So if she says, honey, I'm just going off to the Beis Hamikdash now, and he says, what for? then he can, at that point, says Rabbi, he can follow her there and see, whoa, just a second, I know what's going on over here. I'm being Mayfair, my friend, and so even after they brought the first korban, he can be Mayfair and prevent her from having to shave her hair.
Okay. A man may declare his son a Nazir, but a woman may not declare her son a Nazir. How are the offerings treated? What's the matter? Did you say something wrong?
No, I'm just remembering the recent Haftarah about Shmuel, right?
Yeah.
Shmuel himself, yes. Shmuel was also a Nazir from birth. That's correct.
But his mother said he's a Nazir.
That's right.
That was right. That's interesting. Probably because she had Elkanah's buy-in, because she said to him, like, I made a neder that my son is going to be dedicated to the Mikdash and he's going to be a Nazir and whatever. And Elkanah said, well, yeah, guess so. So he basically ratified it.
Okay.
How are the offerings treated? If the son shaved or his relative shaved him, if he protested or his relatives protested, if he had an animal set aside, the sin offering dies, the burnt offering is offered as a burnt offering, and the peace offering is offered as a peace offering, but is eaten for 1 day, and it does not require bread. If he had unspecified funds, they go for voluntary offerings. Specified funds, the money for the sin offering goes to the Dead Sea. One may not benefit from it, but the rules governing the misuse of sacred items do not apply to it. With the money for the burnt offering, they bring a burnt offering, and the rules governing the misuse of sacred items apply. With the money for the peace offering, they bring a peace offering, but it is eaten for 1 day, and it does not require bread.
Okay.
Terrific.
Okay, well done. Excellent.
Everybody have a great day. Enjoy.
Okay, have a lovely day.
Tomorrow. It's a shame. Thank you.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.